Well, welcome back to Talking Team with another episode. Today we have Peter Spurrier. Did I say your name right? I
You
didn't ask.
did. Well done.
Okay. And he's the founder of Feeling Good UK, which I'm super excited to hear about. But he's also a BABCP accredited CBT practitioner. And he's also an accredited coach. He's chair of the Special Interest Group Team CBT and been a general medical practitioner. You also do training and as well as coaching, Peter. So tell us a little bit about how you got into team.
Well, I think the journey started about 10 years ago, and I was at that time a GP in this general medical practice system, which allowed 10 minutes for each patient.
Ooh.
And you were seeing 30 or more patients a day.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was finding that a bit stressful because, not least because patients were not being served well.
Yeah.
And you just end up running faster and missing your lunch and working all hours. So, well, perhaps for the first time in my life, I had a good think and had this idea of training up in CBT, because then you get an hour with
Okay.
clients. And I thought that was a huge luxury. An hour, you can
Sure.
fix everybody. That's fantastic.
Yeah. 10
So,
times the time.
sorry,
10 times the time. Or no,
10,
maybe
yeah, well,
six
close.
times. 6 times.
um, so, it was a fantasy, but the things lined up, and I was able to get myself a half-day release from what I was doing, and then a day release. So I did a postgraduate certificate in CBT for long-term conditions. So that kind of fitted. And then I went on to do the CBT training, and then became accredited. And then I was all set to go by the time I retired. But a couple of years after that thought, when I was still a general practice, part of my training, I spotted this workshop in the UK called Scared Stiff by a certain David Burns.
Okay.
And yeah, and I didn't know much about him, but it looked like a good workshop. So I went along and liked it. Although I wasn't completely bowled away at that time. I don't think my mind was open enough, to be honest. But I did like it enough to buy the toolkit, which was a big white folder.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that sat on my bookshelf for about 3 years until I retired. And then I took it off the bookshelf and started looking at it. Now, the bit that pulled me in was the fact that you could use lots of different methods from wherever. Because part of my training, all these high-flying guys had been talking at me, and I was learning a lot, but it faded and atrophied, and I just needed somewhere to put all this confusion together. So, because I really wanted my clients to have the best, and the best a bit of the best might be here, and a bit of the best might be there. So that's what pulled me in the first place. And also embracing this what we call cross-sectional work, that is the here and now. We call it cross-sectional in the UK.
Okay.
With a longitudinal
Cross-sectional work, right?
Longitudinal work, which is all that core beliefs and assumptions and rules for living and values. So all those deeper, what we might call deeper things. And again, Team CBT seemed to answer those dilemmas for me. So that's what pulled me in at first. And then I decided to give it a go. So I had to swallow the bitter pill and start testing. I hated testing as a GP. Before and after every session, but that's what you've got to do. So having got over the barriers and resistance to doing that, I moved quickly to the position of never wanting to practice without it. Feeling it was negligent not to use it. And then I started working my way through the podcasts and went to a 4-day intensive in San Francisco, 2019.
Okay.
The atmosphere, the attitudes, and the welcome I received there were moving. Really learned a lot, and There was one time David was talking to somebody in the audience with social and performance anxiety, and he asked everybody, "Is there anybody else here with that sort of problem?" I said, "Come up onto the stage." So one or two people went on the stage, and then one or two people more, and then there were about 2/3 of the audience on the stage. I remember thinking, the stage is going to collapse. Anyway, I went up there on the stage, and it felt quite emotional. It was odd.
Mm.
Found myself getting almost tearful. But anyway, following the intensive, I was sold. No turning back.
Yeah, but that experience of, going on stage, I think, what I miss right now, I love about COVID is that we did a lot of stuff online. So I got to join Tuesday group and other things that David does. But the downside is we haven't been having the live. And I think that those really leave an impact. And the fact you got on stage and 2/3 of the other therapists in the room got on stage, it's pretty powerful. And I've had that, like where we've done raising of hands in live practices with David, and, 90% or even 100% will say yes to certain self-defeating beliefs or negative thoughts. And I think clients aren't aware of how real this is for us as practitioners. And one of the things I like about team is that self-disclosure is on the table. And you mentioned empathy was a big part of your journey, and you just mentioned testing. And I think you also mentioned when I was doing the pre-interview that you think assessment's really important too. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I probably meant assessment of resistance, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Which is a deeper form of empathy that you're really, really getting into the client's shoes and to the point. And I love what David says about this. When you really feel like you feel the resistance yourself, and you can see all the good reasons why the client shouldn't change, then you're probably getting close to really understanding the client. So acceptance of where the client is huge, and that's a big lesson for me. The part of empathy, that you're not trying to change anything unless they're wanting to change. Just respect them as they are.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a big part of it for me.
That respect it's a hot topic, right now in the media community. And yet I think it's been hard to practice, this idea of respecting others and being able to, David uses the term sit with open hands, meaning, we allow people to have that freedom of choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to rename it and call it respect therapy. I just think because it actually goes right through everything in Team CBT, right from the testing to the empathy to the assessment of resistance and to the methods, because I think it's really respectful to make all the best tools available to your clients.
Yeah, I like that, respect therapy. So much in there. You'd said, you got into the place where you feel like it's almost unethical to practice without it.
Or without testing, yeah.
Yeah. Without the whole package.
Well, the testing was the bit that really struck me.
Okay.
If I'm not doing that, I'm not practicing very well. You've got to be testing, and that's what David Burns puts out there, to test not only the mood before and after, but also how you're coming across is hugely important.
Yeah, our last interview with Sunny, he talked about how important testing was for him too. What about team is exciting to you?
Well, it's got to be, seeing those scores change to 0, like the complete cure from being awful. That is really exciting. But just that moment when when whatever method you're using clicks and you see the change, that's got to be it. But also, what I really like about team is it's consistently reliable. if you keep at it, and if they keep doing what they need to do, generally you get there. Time and time again, if you just keep at it
Yeah.
until you find the method that really does it for them.
That
So as a sorry,
no, go for it.
so as a structure, very reliable and consistent.
Yeah, it really is. And you mentioned find a method that works for them. Does that mean the first couple don't always work the first time around?
Um, well, I've got a couple of examples which I might just mention. One where, yeah, it certainly did. You know, the very first thing we did sort of was a cure, and then somebody else who took time to get there, but you know, something very simple just went click.
Yeah, I've definitely had those experiences myself where, you know, you use the same tools and they work and they work and they work, and all of a sudden they don't work, and then you're kind of like looking for more, and there is lots more, but kind of have those moments. And I think it's good. I think it's good to remind ourselves that, you know, because we can get stuck on favorites. I know I have some favorites, some favorite methods,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite methods that you kind of your go-to
Well,
you start with?
I can I answer that in a minute.
Yeah.
Just reframing it first. That is just the groups of methods, like start just how simple and effective the cognitive methods are, the semantic technique, let's define terms, be specific, and then generally going on to the role plays, which are all brilliant, and double standard, externalization of voices, fear, fantasy all have their place, and then maybe a bit of downward arrow to the self-defeating beliefs. But oddly, I'm surprised at my answer to this. The one I'm pulling out is the semantic technique,
Oh, what do you like
because
about that one?
it's so simple
Mm.
and yet can just be so powerful. I've seen people change when they've changed the words. Um, and yeah, I'm just very surprised about how powerful it is.
Yeah, I know that is a simple one. Why don't we tell our listeners and viewers about the semantic technique? Can you describe
Yeah,
that for us?
it's just finding a better word or better words than those that they're using. And the classic one is the should statement.
Mm-hmm.
That people are saying they should do this or they should
I
be like
should be a
that.
better therapist.
Yeah, definitely. That I'm still working on that one.
Well, there's lots of good reasons to hold on to that, right?
Absolutely, yes, yeah, and to
Yeah.
be critical and beat myself up.
Mm-hmm.
No, so yeah, just to change the words a little bit too, I'd really like to. I'd very much prefer to. Um, can change so much, and you know, one of the examples I might just give is you know, one client who just found different words for worthwhile.
Mm, nice. Instead of, you know, I'm worthless.
Yeah, or my worthwhileness is dependent on
Blank.
my
Yeah.
achievements and my
Yeah.
intelligence for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. I like the semantic technique as well, because it, you know, it kind of forces you to stop listening to the critic and reshape a kinder way of talking to yourself, which most people would talk. It's kind of hints at the double standard, right? You know, that we're really critical on what we say to ourselves. We wouldn't say that to another person, generally speaking. But we're kind of nasty how we say things to ourselves. So
Yeah, aren't we? So cruel.
yeah, for sure. I'm just looking at our time. I'm trying to think if we got one more. Um, yeah. You know, with team, we do quite a bit of homework. Has there been any homework in particular that you found helpful for clients?
Um, yes, any homework that you agree on. um,
I love it. Gets back to respect, right?
I, yeah, yeah,
You know, collaborative.
yeah. So when I look at the brief mood survey, if I see homework a lot, I think I don't even need to look at the scores. They'll have gone down. It's just such a correlation. So any homework, but yeah, I mean you can whiz through the cognitive distortions with a distortion crusher. Um, you can do great work on the self-defeating beliefs with a bunch of 4 techniques that seem to work very well for those.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's I just mentioned my one client here. He started out with scores of like 20 out of 20 depressed, 5 on the suicide scale, 20 out of 20 anxiety, 20 out of 20 anger, 0 out of 20 happy, 3 out of 30 relationships. He did okay. He got to about 10 in each group.
Right.
But then he was working on some self-defeating beliefs. And it was the second time of his visit to the semantic technique. And that's the one that took him all the way home. Simple semantic
Wow.
technique. All his scores went down to 0. Happiness score
Wow.
right up to max.
Yeah.
Relationship score up to max. So yeah, it's that semantic technique again.
So lovely to hear the stories of people's recovery. Well, we're out of time today, so we always end with the question: if there's, if all the practitioners, all the GPs in the world were listening that are thinking about doing CBT, what is one thing about Team CBT you'd like them to know?
Respect. So the skills that you practice to listen carefully, pay great attention, accept without trying to change, show curiosity, display humility and appreciation, respect all the way through. And it's not what you say. Ultimately, it's not even the words that you're practicing. It's your attitude in the end, which I think it forces you. Team CBT forces you to get more respectful. And that's
I
the
love
starting
it.
point for all client journeys.
Yeah. You know what? I want to give just a minute or so. Tell us a little bit about Team UK.
All right, thank you. Yes. So it started off not too long after the intensive, and I wrote a little article for the BABCP magazine about Team CBT and said, anybody interested, contact me. Nobody, nothing. Then about 3 months later, one certain Derek Riley from Barnsley in the UK contacted me and said he'd read the article and he'd been using it. So that was 2 of us.
Okay.
You ought to have him on your podcast, by the way. He's really great with pain, chronic pain. So now we're about 40, and our aim is to promote and develop Team CBT in the UK and beyond, support each other. We provide each other with free training, training for newbies, create opportunities for practice. And we've also formed a special interest group with the BABCP, which is the British
Awesome.
Association for Cognitive and Behavioral
Very,
Psychotherapy, by the way.
that's so exciting. Fantastic. Well, we'll put a link to Team UK's website in the description below. Thank you so much for being here, Peter.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Later in the year, we're putting on a 4-day workshop in
Awesome.
August in the
Okay.
UK. And it's going to be fantastic. We've got lots of great teachers coming. It's a stunning setting. It's a really good price, particularly for early birds. And I'm really excited about it.
Very cool. Awesome.
Can I put some things in the show notes?
For sure. Absolutely.
And anybody who wants to email me and to ask about it can do.
Very good. All right. That's great. Well, thanks for being here, Peter.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.